My name is Colonel Emma Carter, and today I'm sitting in Seattle Superior Court, staring down the people who are supposed to be my family. My uniform feels heavier than usual, the crisp blue jacket, the silver rank on my shoulders, the weight of every deployment stitched into the fabric. I can hear the echo of my boots on the polished floor as I walk to the defense table, but I don't flinch. Across from me are my parents, Richard and Patricia Carter, their expressions cold and practiced, and my younger brother Michael, looking every bit the golden boy my grandfather warned me about. They've accused me of abandoning family traditions, of being absent of unworthiness, and they think they can snuff out my name from Grandpa's legacy with a forged will. The judge, Maria Lopez, a former Army captain herself, peers over her glasses, giving me the tiniest hint of understanding behind that stern facade. Outside this courtroom, the city of Seattle hums with gentrification debates and vet rights rallies. But in here, it's silent tension. I clear my throat, clutching my briefcase. The sight of my broken brass compass peeking from a pocket like a secret promise, it only spins when I'm on the true path. And right now, I know exactly what I'm about to do. I still remember the first time Grandpa gave me that compass years ago, when I was desperate for direction, literally and figuratively, in our little town that's now swallowed by condos and coffee shops. He handed me the brass circle with its cracked glass and whispered, "Emma, this will spin toward truth, even if you're lost." It was the only time he spoke so plainly, the only gift he ever called mine. Back then, my parents mocked my dreams of joining the Air Force, told me a girl from a fading neighborhood couldn't break free of expectations. I enlisted anyway, spent 2 decades learning to navigate real storms instead of small-town rumors, and rose to lieutenant colonel before my transfer to the intelligence unit here in Seattle. But nothing prepared me for the storm my family would cook up on home turf, cooking up a legal trap so neat that even the smartest lawyer mother could hide behind it. Yet as I sit here, my fingers grazing the compass, I feel Grandpa's voice steady me. "Find the truth, Emma, and you'll find your way." This city has changed so much since I left. The skyline's glass towers reflect booming tech fortunes, while blue-collar blocks fight to survive. There's talk of veteran housing crises, corporate developers erasing history, and politicians selling the city block by block to the highest bidder. My family's own business, Carter Legacy Properties, claims to honor Grandpa's vision, but behind closed doors, they've been laundering real estate deals through shell companies. That's the social injustice I live and breathe during the day, veteran homelessness, neighborhood displacement. But this courtroom fight is personal. My parents think they can rebrand my absence as betrayal, erase me with paper and ink, and walk away richer and guilt-free. They're wrong. I lean forward, meet my mother's gaze for the first time, and I see that flicker of surprise. The soldier in me steadies the tear that threatens my eye. This battle is bigger than anger. It's about reclaiming my name, my worth, and honoring the man who taught me that some compasses never lie. I dug into public records the day I got the call about Grandpa's death. No notification of the will reading, no word about the funeral arrangements. Just a sterile voicemail instructing me to appear in court if I cared about inheritance. Something in my gut screamed foul play. Over the next 36 hours, I pored over county filings, property deeds, and bank statements in the back booth of a 24-hour diner nursing lukewarm coffee. Every signed document dated 3 weeks before his passing matched the forged handwriting experts later confirmed. But I found an anomaly in the notary seal. The name E. Carlisle has no bar association record. A quick online check under my reporter friend Lucas Nguyen's tip turned up nada. That's when I called Sofia Rodriguez, my former Marine Corps buddy, who's now a private investigator specializing in veteran affairs. She showed up at midnight with an encrypted thumb drive full of audio clips from a closed-door meeting between my parents and Senator Jackson clips that mentioned the shell companies, the sale of the old neighborhood, even an off-the-books payoff to city council. Risky move, but it confirmed they'd planned this for months. Now, sitting here in court, the air feels electric. I glance down at my compass, its needle trembling as if ready to snap back to true north. I know that once I stand to speak, they won't see it coming. I'm not here to beg for mercy. I'm here to present facts, deliver every piece of proof I've clawed back from the shadows. My heart's pounding. But this is what Grandpa warned me about finding truth in the dark and letting it guide you. I feel the weight lift slightly as I open my briefcase, revealing 2 sealed manila envelopes. One contains Grandpa's original will, handwritten in ink that matches the letters of his childhood scrawl. The other holds a letter he tucked inside his Bible the night before he died, a letter I found hidden in plain sight. I can almost hear his voice in my ear. They don't deserve your kindness, but truth deserves your courage. Just then Lucas stands at the back of the room and gives me a subtle nod. His laptop screen glows with a live stream tally, thousands watching, sharing hungry for a hero's comeback. Social media has already picked up the story, Veteran Officer versus Family Fortune, trending under #CarterTruth. I fight the urge to smile. My parents shift in their seats, eyes darting toward Lucas, realizing this fight just went public. Michael's knuckles whiten around his pen. Even the judge leans forward, curiosity flickering in her gaze. The silence stretches. I cup my hand around one envelope and rise my voice steady and clear. Your Honor, if I may. The moment my chair scrapes back, the compass in my pocket seems to pulse as though Grandpa's spirit is right beside me. I step toward the bench, feeling miles of road behind me and a world of obstacles ahead. In that instant, I know there's no turning back. The next words I speak will change everything for me, for them, for the community that believes in second chances. As I hand over the first envelope, the courtroom air snaps with anticipation, and just before I speak, I catch my mother's expression. Fear, betrayal, regret, I can't tell. All I know is that the compass's cracked glass is spinning again, and it's pointing straight at justice. That's where I pause breath, held ready to expose the lie that nearly wiped me out. Little do they know, the next twist isn't just about ink on paper. It's about a secret Grandpa buried in his own handwriting. And when the truth finally comes out, there'll be no putting the pieces back together. I square my shoulders and clear my throat, steadying my voice so it won't betray how much this moment means. Your Honor, I say, handing the first manila envelope to the bailiff, this is my grandfather's original will written in his own hand. The paper feels weighty in my hand, as though each crease carries a lifetime of his quiet determination. In that instant, I remember him leaning over me in his workshop years ago, sanding the stock of an old hunting rifle and chiding me gently, "Never let small people put your path off course." His words echo in my mind as the envelope passes to the judge. There's a faint rustle as Judge Lopez opens it, her eyes flicking to the neat cursive so familiar it hits me like a physical blow. It's the kind of handwriting that quivers at the ends of strokes, the kind that betrays a human hand rather than a machine. I feel my heart thud in my chest, and for a moment, I worry, what if she thinks this is another trick? What if she dismisses it as contrived drama from a grieving granddaughter? But then I glance to the back of the room and see Lucas Nguyen's camera trained on me, the live stream comments racing by. Go, Colonel Carter. Show them the truth, and I draw a breath that tastes like resolve. I let the silence stretch for 3 slow beats before I continue. I also ask you to consider this. My hand slides into my jacket pocket and comes out clutching the cracked brass compass Grandpa gave me the day I shipped out for officer candidate school. Even broken, I've carried it everywhere, its needle frozen, until I stumbled onto the first clue of my family's deception. Now I unclip it and hold it up so that everyone can see how the glass is spiderwebbed and the metal dulled by sweat and dirt, yet somehow the needle still twitches when I hold it level. This compass only spins toward truth. I say quietly, and the courtroom feels hot enough to boil. My mother's face has gone pale. I can almost see the panic behind her composure. The judge studies the compass, then tucks it into the pocket of her robe, as though she understands its meaning, without words. It's a symbol now, not just of my grandfather's faith in me, but of the moral north we're all supposed to follow. Behind me, Sofia Rodriguez stands from the gallery and steps forward, her Marine Corps gait still intact after all these years. She tilts her head toward the judge and nods, and I know she's handed off the next piece of evidence. The bailiff returns with a small thumb drive, which the judge plugs into her laptop on the bench. Lucas leans forward, his reporter's curiosity shining in his eyes, tracking the judge's screen as she opens a file labeled Carter Family Meeting, Audio. A low hum of anticipation ripples through the room. My stomach tightens, but I force myself to breathe. I've heard these recordings in a dimly lit motel room, my parents' voices clinical and conspiratorial, plotting to reassign the family estate to shell corporations and sell Grandpa's land to developers who plan to knock down historic homes and displace longtime residents. Now it's about to become public record. Judge Lopez clicks play. The speakers crackle, and suddenly the room is filled with the crisp tones of my mother's voice. We need to finalize the documents by next week, no questions asked, no loose ends. Then my father's calm murmur, Senator Jackson will handle the city council vote. He promised us a green light. I imagine my heart trying to escape my chest. Every line of that conversation confirms what I've suspected. The judge's pen hovers over the screen, and I swear time slows. My brother Michael's confident smirk evaporates. His shoulders slump as the weight of exposed betrayal settles on him. Even the senator's name, usually spoken with reverence, sounds hollow and corrupt. When the recording ends, silence crashes over us like a wave. Judge Lopez removes her earbuds and looks down, eyes grave. The bailiff's hand hovers over the stop button. For the live stream, Lucas flicks out his phone, holding it high so the camera keeps rolling. Transparency is part of my strategy. Everyone needs to see the truth. I rise again, risking a schoolmarm's reproach. But I speak softly. These audio files were obtained under privilege by a certified Marine investigator. They demonstrate a coordinated effort to commit fraud against my grandfather, against the local community, and against the dignity of those who served under me. My voice doesn't waver. I feel the iron lock of inner strength Grandpa instilled in me, tempered by every hardship I've endured overseas. I glance out at the gallery and note the shifts in body language, murmurs, startled glances, even a few heads bowing in shame. The public gallery is filled with veterans in uniform, some saluting me quietly, others wiping tears from their eyes. They see not just a daughter fighting her family, but a soldier defending truth and justice. Before the defense can object, a new figure strides forward, Marcus Bennett, a forensic accountant from the Department of Treasury. He educates the court in clipped, matter-of-fact tones about money flows linking Carter legacy properties to offshore accounts. He passes the judge a spreadsheet so dense with column after column of transaction dates, amounts, and shell company names that the courtroom hushes in collective shock. Lucas live streams Marcus's every gesture. The viewer count spikes above 10,000 and climbing. Senator Jackson's face blanches on a projected screen behind Marcus, broadcast through the courtroom's audiovisual system. The judge stares at the spreadsheet, then at Marcus, then at me, and I feel a glimmer of hope, justice in motion. The treasurer's blue suit analyst slides her findings across the bench, a direct thread from Grandpa's estate funds to a private offshore trust for Jackson's re-election. Everyone in that room senses the gravity of the conspiracy, the betrayal twisting like a knife in their collective conscience. But I'm not done. I reach into my briefcase for the second envelope, the one Grandpa tucked inside his battered Bible the night before he died. I can't help the tears that prick the corner of my eye. His last words to me were raw, honest, and full of love. Emma, he'd written, don't let them scramble your sense of right and wrong. Your true family is the one who stands by you when the storm hits, and your true north is whatever compass points toward justice. I hold the letter aloft, my voice catching only for a heartbeat before I forge ahead. Your Honor. This letter was found hidden in his personal effects. It outlines his reasons for excluding certain family members from his final testament. It speaks not of property or money, but of integrity and service. I let that sink in. Riches are fleeting, principles endure. The letter adds a layer of moral clarity that no spreadsheet or audio clip can match. At that moment, the courtroom door swings open and a uniformed Marine enters, not to salute me, but to solemnly stand guard at the back. More follow their boots in perfect unison, a visual testament to every life I swore to protect. The judge's eyes soften, and I feel her human side emerging, the veteran who understands what duty demands. I lower the letter, letting its gravity fill the space between us. My parents exchange a glance that says more than words ever could. They miscalculated me, thinking I'd come home broken, thinking their scheme would stand. Instead, they've unleashed a storm stronger than any I faced abroad. Judge Lopez raises her hand for silence. "Ms. Carter," she says, voice steady but infused with quiet power. "You've presented compelling evidence of fraud and collusion. This court will take judicial notice of these documents and audio files and will consider criminal referral." The words settle over me like a benediction and a challenge. I nod once, tears threatening to spill, but held at bay by the same resolve that kept me upright in the crow's nests of warships and the dust-choked roads of distant deserts. My mission isn't over. It's only just begun. As the gavel hovers poised to send ripples of consequence through my family's legacy and the entire city's conscience, I feel my compass warm against my heart. It trembles, pointing the way forward. And in that pregnant pause with my future and my past colliding in a single courtroom, I know I've chosen the right path. But the trial isn't finished and the battle for justice is far from won. There's one more twist waiting in the files, one I've been too afraid to voice until now. The judge's gaze meets mine, the weight of anticipation heavy in the air. I take a breath, ready to reveal the final secret Grandpa entrusted only to me. And just like that, the courtroom feels smaller charged, teetering on the edge of something irreversible. The next word I speak will decide not just my inheritance, but whether a broken family can ever find its way back to honesty, or whether they'll sink beneath their own deceit. As the gavel hovers just above the sounding block, I swallow and speak, my voice quiet but unwavering. "Your Honor, there's a codicil to my grandfather's will that has not yet been mentioned." Every eye in the courtroom snaps back to me. I slip a third slimmer envelope across the bench toward Judge Lopez, my hand steady, even as my pulse echoes in my ears. I see my parents' shoulders tense. Michael's jaw clenches. The envelope bears Grandpa's seal, a simple compass rose engraved in wax. It's the same design etched on the battered brass compass I carry. Judge Lopez breaks the wax, unfolds the document, and begins to read. Her lips move just enough that I catch the words. "In the event that any beneficiary attempts to defraud or forcibly diminish the interests of another, I hereby revoke all familial bequests and direct that my estate be distributed to the Carter Community Veterans Trust." In that instant, the courtroom goes electric. The codicil isn't just a clause, it's a moral firewall, Grandpa's final line in the sand. No longer can my parents claim all the assets for themselves. If they're proven to have schemed, every dollar, every property reverts to a fund for veterans and displaced families in Seattle's rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods. I feel a tremor of triumph, but it's tempered by the gravity of what this means. My fight has just taken the most dangerous turn. Silence crashes into uproar. My father leaps to his feet, face ashen. "Objection," he bellows, but even his lawyer looks uncertain. The judge raises her hand, forestalling him. "Mr. Carter," she says, voice cold, "this codicil is valid under Washington probate law. Unless you can present evidence of undue influence or forgery, your prior claims are null." My mother presses her hand to her mouth. I swear I see tears glistening. Michael's smirk has vanished, replaced by desperation. It's the first time I've seen him off balance. I take a breath, feeling the weight of my uniform and the compass in my pocket, remembering Grandpa's words about moral north. My ancestors built that house on Beacon Hill, not to feather nests for the greedy, but as a refuge for generations. Now his last act honors that legacy, turning riches into service. I realize how tenuous my victory is. My family could still challenge the document, drag this out for years, bury the truth under legal fees and red tape. But for now, they're exposed, and their greed has backfired spectacularly. A murmur rises among the spectators, veterans in worn jackets standing next to tech investors in sleek suits. The social tension in Seattle lurks in their eyes. The city's boom has left blue-collar neighborhoods crumbling. Carter Legacy Properties was part of that boom, but Grandpa always believed in giving back. The codicil resurrects that belief and transforms the estate into a bulwark against displacement. I glance at Sofia Rodriguez, who gives me a curt nod of approval. She fingers the Marine Corps emblem on her lapel, another symbol of sacrifice over self-interest. Sophia's eyes flick to Judge Lopez silently, urging her to uphold the codicil. The judge folds the paper glances at both sides, then announces, "I will recess for deliberation and resume at 10 a.m. tomorrow to rule on the validity of this codicil." The gavel falls. A heartbeat later, the courtroom erupts in whispers, some cheering, some hissing. I gather my papers, heart hammering, not just with relief, but with the knowledge that when we return, everything could still go sideways. That night, in the sterile quiet of my apartment overlooking the Sound, I replay the courtroom scene. The compass sits on my desk, its needle now quivering ever so slightly, as if stirred by the storm I've unleashed. I feel proud I've honored Grandpa's final wish, but also hollow. My parents betrayed me, and now they're fighting back. In the next 24 hours, they'll hire top-tier attorneys, maybe even political operatives, to discredit me. They'll exploit every loophole, every emotional fracture in my credibility, painting me as the estranged daughter bent on revenge. And maybe they're right. Revenge is a risky path. It can harden your heart, eclipsing the original cause. I remind myself this isn't about spite. It's about integrity, about keeping the compass pointed towards service. Still, I know the real battle starts now. By dawn, social media has exploded. Lucas Nguyen's livestream peaked at 50,000 concurrent viewers. Hashtags like #CarterCodicil and #HowVetTrust soar. News vans line the street outside my building. I step over cables to reach my front door uniform, pressed and ready for round 2. I've arranged to meet Marcus Bennett again. He's filed a motion for a temporary injunction freezing all Carter assets until the codicil's legality is settled. We convene in a conference room at the law firm of Brooks and Vale, where General Linda Brooks lent her endorsement and her retired OG stature to our cause. Marcus unfurls a fresh set of documents showing property liens trust fund structures and a proposed governance board composed of veterans and community leaders. It's ironclad, but Marcus warns. They'll challenge the trust's very existence as beyond Grandpa's authority. Sophia stands by me, arms crossed, her presence a fierce reminder that I'm not alone. She taps her foot rhythmically, an old drill sergeant habit ready to spring. And at midday, I return to the courthouse, flanked by a small entourage, Franklin, our lead counsel, Marcus, Sophia, and Lucas, camera in hand. The public gallery is packed. Even the local press has shuffled seats. I catch my mother's eye in the audience. She's seated flanked by corporate lawyers wearing a stiff suit and an expression that's all forced calm. My father sits beside her, chin bowed over a table covered in case files. Michael sneaks glances at his phone, jaw clenched. Senator Jackson is conspicuously absent, but rumor says FBI agents have an eye on him after Marcus's offshore trust revelations. The courtroom feels smaller than before, tension compressed. Judge Lopez returns smooth as ever. "Please be seated," she intones, and the hush is absolute. Franklin stands first. He delivers a concise argument. Grandpa's intent was clear. The codicil was witnessed by 2 longtime neighbors and notarized legally. Washington law upholds the clause in the absence of credible evidence of coercion. Then Marcus outlines the public interest case, how the trust would provide transitional housing for veterans, fund legal aid for displaced residents, and offer job training programs. A hush falls as he cites figures on homelessness and displacement in Seattle, facts that resonate beyond personal grievance and into social justice territory. My heart swells at the thought that Grandpa's last act might protect vulnerable people, the same ones my family ignored, while gentrification swept their homes away. Then the defense rises. Their lead attorney, a silver-haired shark, leans into the mic. He argues undue influence, that I, a decorated officer, exploited my authority over Grandpa in his final days, convincing him to change the will against his true wishes. He suggests I might have manipulated Grandpa, that my military bearing and emotional appeals were too strong for a grieving old man. A hush follows. My blood runs cold. This is a risk they've been planning to turn my strength into guilt, my service into leverage. I imagine invisible scales tipping. All the community goodwill, all the proof of fraud could be overshadowed by innuendo about exploitation of a dying man. It's a tactic as old as time. Attack the messenger to silence the message. My stomach churns, but Sophia squeezes my hand. I close my eyes for a split second and recall Grandpa's last conversation with me, how he insisted the codicil be locked in his Bible until needed, how he made Sophia promise to guard it if he faltered. Her presence here isn't ceremonial. She's a living witness to the intent behind his words. I stand steel in my spine. Your Honor. I say, voice strong. My grandfather was a man of unwavering principle. He trusted me because I am the only one in this family who never wavered in service to others. If my intentions are under question, I welcome a complete investigation into my conduct over the past year. The courtroom leans in. I can see the defense attorney bristle, the judge lift an eyebrow. I've called their bluff, daring them to prove me a manipulator rather than a truth seeker. For a beat, nothing happens. Then Judge Lopez taps her gavel lightly. The court will take this matter under advisement. I will review the evidence of undue influence alongside the codicil's legitimacy, she says, eyes flicking between counsel tables. The words land like a verdict before one is ever officially spoken. There's no applause. This is a courtroom, not a theater, but the tension breaks in microseconds, sighs, shifts, a scattering of pens. I remain standing, chest heaving, aware that I've just raised the stakes yet again. My parents exchange a glance that borders on panic. Michael rubs his temples. We file out to the hallway, where Lucas meets me with his phone eyes shining. They're calling you a hero, he says, but social media is polarized. Some still think you're the villain. I nod, mind racing. Heroes and villains, two labels that can swing with a single tweet. I'm vulnerable on both sides. Too much strength, they say I'm ruthless. Too much compassion, they say I'm naive. Grandpa's compass rattles on my desk back home, reminding me that I must hold my own course, no matter how violent the winds of opinion. As I step into the cool air outside the courthouse, flanked by my allies, I feel the weight of every veteran, every displaced neighbor resting on my shoulders. The battle for the Carter estate has become a struggle for community soul. I pause at the courthouse steps, looking up at the gray Washington sky. Rain threatens, but I feel only resolve. My phone buzzes, another news alert, another challenge to my integrity. I close my eyes for a moment, breathing deep. The fight is far from over. Tomorrow we'll hear the judge's ruling on the codicil. If she sides with me, the trust springs to life. If not, my family's machinations will stand. Either way, the public debate is just heating up. I tuck my hands into my pockets, fingertips brushing the compass's cracked edges through my coat. Grandpa's spirit lingers in that tiny device, urging me onward. And then just as I turn to head home, my phone rings with an untraceable number. I glance at the screen and feel a sudden chill. Before I can answer, I recognize the voice on voicemail, a raspy whisper saying, "Only stop digging, Emma, or you'll lose more than your inheritance." The message ends. I stare at my screen, heart pounding. The threat isn't anonymous, it's a promise. I slip the phone into my pocket, the echo of that warning reverberating through my bones. I've faced enemies in far-off sands, but this time, the battlefield is personal, and the cost could be everything I hold dear. I draw in a breath of the damp evening air and steel myself. Come sunrise, I'll be back in that courtroom, but I'll also be looking over my shoulder. And that is the moment I realize this fight for justice may demand a price far greater than I ever expected. My name is Colonel Emma Carter, and by the time I dragged myself out of bed the next morning, the entire block was buzzing with camera flashes and microphone booms. I pressed my palm against the window, the city's gray dawn reflecting off the glass. Seattle's tech towers rising behind the old brick facades of Belltown, a perfect backdrop for the story of a veteran officer fighting her own family. My phone vibrated non-stop messages from Sofia Rodriguez, checking on me, texts from Franklin, laying out new filings alerts from Lucas's live stream, climbing past 60,000 viewers. And tucked between them all was a text from an unknown number. "We warned you." Back off. I felt that familiar tingle of steel in my spine, the same sensation I got before landing in dirt-choked helipads overseas. Only this time, the enemy wore tailored suits and sat in pews of a courtroom. I threw on my dress blues medals polished just last night and grabbed the cracked brass compass Grandpa gave me. The needle spun erratically, like it was angry at the threat I'd received. If it pointed toward anything, it was danger. I tucked it into my breast pocket and made my way downstairs, where a semicircle of news vans had plowed over the sidewalk. Reporters called out Colonel Carter. Any comment on these threats, I didn't pause. I threaded through the crowd toward my SUV, my reflection in the tinted windows reminding me that this was no PR stunt. Lives would be at stake if I misstepped. Sophia and I met at the edge of Pike Place Market, far enough from the courthouse that we could talk without TV cameras. She handed me a thermos of coffee and offered a firm nod. "You okay?" she asked, her voice low. I blew across the dark brew. Coffee's cold threats hot, and the judge's ruling on the codicil will drop in 12 hours. I felt the weight of every veteran sleeping in a doorway, every displaced family pushed out by high-rent ads. This fight was about more than inheritance. It was a test of community values versus cold corporate greed. Sophia slipped me a manila folder. Marcus found a secondary archive in the Seattle Public Library. Grandpa donated a microfilm of all his legal docs there. He trusted the public sphere more than any bank vault. She tapped the folder. "We need to retrieve that before someone else does." My heart kicked. Pulling files from the public library at odd hours was legal if you had a court order, but doing it after hours without one, risky. Breaking and entering one step shy of sabotage. But if my family had paid off the commission to garnish the codicil's authenticity, they'd know exactly where to challenge it chain of custody. If we could secure the microfilm ourselves, get it on record, its provenance would be airtight. "Let's do it," I said, feeling the soldier's resolve ignite. Sophia smiled grimly. I knew she'd been itching for action. We called Lucas to live stream our plan. Transparency would cut off any argument about tampering later, and met him at the library's rear entrance just before midnight. The Seattle Public Library's central branch felt cavernous at night, rows of silent stacks stretching into shadow. A compass rose mosaic lay embedded in the marble floor near the main stairwell. It was part of Grandpa's donation, a subtle message: "Find your way by truth." I knelt, tracing its lines with gloved fingers, then let the cracked brass compass hover above it. The needle aligned almost perfectly with one of the cardinal points in the mosaic, as if Grandpa's spirit guided my hand. Sophia worked the combination on the side door's keypad. Her PI credentials got us in, though the system recorded our 2-minute window. We slipped inside Lucas, framing every move with his phone. We navigated to the archives on the 3rd floor, our footsteps muffled by plush carpet. Security cameras slid overhead like indifferent sentinels. I led the way to a locked steel cabinet labeled Microfilm Archives, Legal Deposits. Sophia pulled out her badge and the scanned court order Franklin prepared. I presented it to the digital reader. The lock clicked. We extracted a canister marked Carter Wills, 1942-2025, popped it open, and extracted a reel. My breath caught. There it was. Grandpa's original will, the codicil letter, everything on clear, sharp microfilm. We slid it into a portable scanner Lucas had rigged to his backpack battery pack. While Lucas fed the film through, I realized the irony. I spent years decoding intelligence intercepts in desert sand, and here I was, decoding Grandpa's microfilm in a hushed library vault. The scanner whirred. Lights blinked. Data transferred. Sophia kept watch at the door. 5 minutes, Lucas whispered. I knelt beside him, watching the progress bar. Each megabyte was a lifeline to the codicil's future. I thumbed the compass in my pocket, its needle finally still aimed at true north again. Suddenly, we heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Sophia hissed, "Security guard." Lucas froze, heart visible in his throat. The library's nighttime guard, a stocky man with a flashlight, rounded the corner. His beam caught Lucas's phone light first, then me and Sophia crouched in front of the vault. "What are you doing?" he demanded, voice low but firm. I stayed calm. "Officer Carter, Seattle Superior Court, Order 1253, J." I said, sliding the compass badge out of my pocket. "We have authorization to retrieve these legal documents under subpoena. If you'll call your supervisor, we'll produce the paperwork." The guard frowned, flashlight trembling. Sophia stepped forward quietly, but confidently, adding, "We're on a tight deadline. The judge's ruling hinges on this evidence. He hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and intimidation. The corridor's hush felt miles thick. Lucas covered the final seconds of scanning. The progress bar hit 100%. I pressed play on the tiny laptop screen. The codicil letter's wording lay crisp against the film grain. The guard's flashlight shivered. He looked from the screen to my face. "Fine," he muttered. "But you're clearing out, got it?" Sophia nodded. "We'll be out in 30 seconds. He led the way back, keeping his light trained on us like a spotlight. We packed up the equipment, stashing the reel in my bag, and copying the digital files to encrypted drives. I clicked off the scanner. Lucas hit end stream the footage already backed up to the cloud. As we reached the lobby's automatic doors, the guard let us out with a curt nod. The emergency exit banged shut behind us. We exhaled. I glanced at my watch 1 minute under the 30-second window. We'd made it. Outside, the neon lights of the market glinted off damp pavement. I pulled the compass from my pocket. Its needle danced for a moment, then stilled, pointing south toward Pioneer Square, toward the old workshop Grandpa left locked behind his house. It was time to secure the physical codicil vault one last time. We piled into my SUV, Lucas driving at breakneck speed through empty streets. Rain began to patter tiny pinpricks on the windshield. We reached Grandpa's workshop, a squat brick building nestled between a craft brewery and a boarded-up antiques shop. The place smelled of sawdust and memories. I climbed out, compass in hand, the needle pointing straight at the rusted padlock on the back door. I knelt in the rain, feeling the compass's weight, remembering Grandpa's promise. "Truth is heavier than water, Emma. It sinks to the bottom." I slapped the lock with a gloved fist. It shuddered, but held. Sophia found a crowbar in Lucas's trunk. With 2 quick strikes, the lock split. We slipped inside. Flashlights revealed a maze of dusty workbenches, tool racks, and the old safe where Grandpa stowed his most treasured possessions. The safe's door stood slightly ajar. Someone had beaten us here. My heart dropped. The metal chest that once held the codicil was empty. I pressed my palm to the cold steel door, mind racing. "They got here before us," I whispered. Sophia's flashlight bobbed over empty shelves. Lucas trained the light on the floor, scattered fragments of paper, bits of melted wax from the codicil seal. Someone had broken in, melted the wax, and stolen the original document. My hands shook. Outside, thunder rumbled. The compass in my pocket spun wildly, as though enraged at the theft. Rain sluiced through broken windows, washing away footprints in the dirt. I knelt on the workshop's warped floorboards, staring at that chaotic scene. All our risks, the courtroom battle, the library heist, the late-night drive had been for this, a document already gone. I swallowed hard, chest tight. Without the original codicil, the trust could be challenged again. My family's gambit threatened to wipe out Grandpa's final wish entirely. I rose, rain plastering my hair, and faced Sophia and Lucas. They want everything I said, voice low. But they won't have it. My mind spun through contingencies, digital copies, witness testimony from Sophia about Grandpa's intent, Franklin's affidavits. The legal battle would shift from preserving an original to proving the codicil's validity without it. I pressed the compass to my heart. Its needle finally stilled, pointing toward the courtroom, toward justice itself. "We go back to Plan B," I said, voice firm despite the ache in my chest. "We'll use the microfilm, the audio, the lawyer's affidavits. We'll prove Grandpa's intent beyond any doubt." Lucas grabbed my arm. "And the workshop?" he asked. "We can't let them get away with burning evidence." I shook my head. "We focus on what we still have. Original codicil or not, the message is clear. Grandpa gave everything to the veterans and community he loved. We'll fight to enforce that." Rain dripped down my uniform. I let it wash over me. The world felt unsteady, but inside, I was solid, anchored by truth. I pulled out my phone, keyed a message to Franklin: original stolen. Activate backup affidavits. Move motion to admit microfilm as primary evidence. I hit send. In the heavy silence of that burning workshop, with only the compass's fractured glass reflecting the lightning, I realized something crucial. This wasn't just about winning a legal battle. It was about honoring a promise to a man who believed in fairness over fortune. And no matter how many twists they threw at me, courtroom theatrics, break-ins, threats, I would stay the course. Grandpa's moral north would guide me. I squared my shoulders, feeling the uniform settle around me, and whispered into the storm, "I'll get it back, or I'll make sure they can never use it against us." As the rain pounded the roof and distant sirens wailed, I stepped into the night. Ahead lay a courtroom, a trust fund, and a city watching. And behind me, behind all of us, lay an enemy who would stop at nothing. But I was no ordinary heir. I was Colonel Emma Carter, and I never lost my way. The compass's needle quivered once more, then locked onto the path ahead. My fight for justice had only just begun. ChatGPT deny the morning of the big evidentiary hearing dawned gray and drizzly, Seattle living up to its reputation. I woke before my alarm chest tight with anticipation, and a dozen tabs open on my phone, Franklin's latest motions, Marcus's updated accounting charts, Lucas's comment thread buzzing with supporters and trolls alike. The stolen codicil still gnawed at me, but I'd vowed to turn that setback into strength. I dressed in my dress blues once more, each medal a reminder that I'd survived worse odds overseas, and I clipped the cracked brass compass to my lapel. Its needle finally stilled pointed straight up into my heart. I splashed cold water on my face. Weighed in the implications today. We'd ask the court to admit microfilm digital files, witness affidavits, library security footage, even neighbor testimony, all to prove Grandpa's intent, despite the missing original. If Judge Lopez granted our request, the Carter Community Veterans Trust would be one step closer to reality. If not, my family's corruption could stand. There was no middle ground. Driving through the slick streets, I replayed last night's strategy meeting in my head. Marcus had built a 6-point plan, one established chain of custody for the microfilm via time-stamped library camera logs. 2. Introduce the encrypted digital scans authenticated by a third-party forensic expert. 3. Present. Sophia's written affidavit about Grandpa's codicil instructions. 4. Call the nighttime guard who led us into the library under court order, the audio transcript of my parents conspiring, and 6. Position testimony from Mrs. Elena Gomez, the neighbor who witnessed Michael's goons breaking into Grandpa's workshop. Each piece risked its own attack. The guard could claim mistaken identity. The neighbor's vision might be challenged. The forensic expert cross-examined the digital files, argued as tampered. But taken together, they formed a web too dense to unravel. I parked curbside near the courthouse, glancing at the neon green cafe across the street. It was where I'd met Sophia that first night, forging an alliance in the glare of news cameras. Now she stood as my rock, and I drew strength from her steadiness. Inside the courthouse lobby, I found her pacing before the security checkpoint. Her PI instincts on overdrive, she'd tracked down the night guard, Lorenzo Bennett, who looked every bit the weary after-hours city worker, but carried a quiet integrity. He'd agreed to testify, despite the subpoena frightening him. I slid him a coffee and gave him a reassuring smile. "You're doing the right thing," I told him, remembering the fear in his eyes. Sophia handed me Mrs. Gomez's affidavit, detailed clear and heartbreaking. The old woman described seeing 3 men torching the workshop lock before dawn, the smell of gasoline mingling with Grandpa's varnish. It wasn't pretty, but it was real testimony of malicious intent to destroy evidence. I slipped her letter into my briefcase next to Lucas's library footage on a thumb drive and Marcus's spreadsheets printed on heavyweight legal paper. The courtroom filled fast. News cameras jammed the back row. Veterans in uniform stood guard, civilians craning their necks to watch. On the defense side, my parents sat stiff as mannequins, flanked by a squad of corporate lawyers in dark suits who looked ready to disembowel any witness. Michael loomed behind them, eyes darting like a cornered animal. We took our seats. Franklin, on my left head, bowed over case files. Sophia next to him, calm and alert. Marcus on my right laptop, open and ready. Lucas raised his camera from the gallery angle trained on my face. I felt his solidarity. Judge Lopez entered her presence, as quiet as a breeze before a storm. She nodded curtly. The room stood, then sat. "We're here on defendant's motion to exclude evidence of the codicil and to admit substitute evidence," she said. "You may proceed." Franklin began with the library microfilm he presented. Time-stamped logs from the Seattle Public Library security system footage of Sophia and me entering, presenting a valid court order on the digital reader, extracting the reel and feeding it through Lucas's scanner. The video played on the courtroom monitor, our silhouettes in the blue glow of late-night stacks, librarians' nods of acknowledgement, the vault door sliding shut behind us. The defense lawyer immediately jumped up. "Objection, chain of custody, Your Honor. This footage could have been doctored." Franklin waved the objection away, showcasing a direct feed from the library's internal server, authenticated by the IT director's affidavit. The chain of custody was unbroken. The guard's testimony on the stand confirmed each step. Lorenzo, looking small in his security uniform, recounted the night in a trembling but honest voice. Yes, he recognized our badges. Yes, he confirmed the court order. Yes, he saw us leave with the reel. Under cross-examination, the defense tried to imply confusion. A garbled phone call might have convinced him we were contractors, but his answers remained consistent. The judge listened without comment, eyes unreadable. Next came the forensic digital scans. Marcus took the podium and explained how he'd submitted the raw microfilm images to an independent lab specializing in document verification. The lab's certificate of authenticity appeared on screen, complete with digital signatures and metadata immune to alteration. He clicked through side-by-side comparisons. Grain patterns exactly matched those on Grandpa's original deed from 1975, stored in the public registry. The defense lawyer tried to muddy the waters, suggesting digital artifacts could be inserted, but Marcus swiftly pointed out that the lab used a peer-reviewed process accepted by federal courts. He offered the lab director's affidavit and even a video deposition. The technical minutiae filled the room with a dry roar of credibility that the judge absorbed in silence. We moved on to Sophia's affidavit, detailing Grandpa's personal instructions she'd been with him the night he added the codicil, holding his hand as he wrote. She described his trembling script, the candlelight reflecting in his tear-filled eyes. I felt a choked lump in my throat, recalling that moment. Under direct examination, Sophia's calm delivery carried more weight than any affidavit on paper. But the defense desperate accused her of coaching, suggested she had motive to testify falsely because she was my ally. Her reply was simple. She loved Grandpa as a father, as her commanding officer, and she refused to allow his last wishes to be trampled. The judge made a quiet note. Then Mrs. Gomez took the stand. The old woman looked as frail as a trembling sapling, but in her eyes burned the memory of injustice. "I seen them," she said softly, voice quivering. "They came at dawn, set the workshop doors to flame." I thought it was a stray cigarette at first. Under cross, the defense lawyer sought to paint her as senile, inaccurate, but Franklin produced her 911 call. Dispatch records corroborated her report. Her tears as she looked at a photo of the wrecked workshop hung in the courtroom pierced the suit-clad stoicism of my family's side. I felt my heart swell. Here was an unlikely hero, a marginalized neighbor discovering the power to hold the wealthy accountable. Finally, I rose. My pulse thundered, but my voice was clear. "Your Honor." All this evidence converges on one truth. My grandfather's final will and codicil, though physically stolen, survive in multiple authenticated forms. Microfilm digital scans, videotaped transmissions, sworn affidavits, eyewitness testimony. His intent was to create a trust benefiting veterans and longtime residents of Seattle, not to enrich those who already possess everything they need. If this court rejects substitute evidence, now Grandpa's moral compass will be silenced forever. I paused, feeling the weight of every uniformed veteran behind me, every displaced neighbor outside. I ask you to honor his compass, broken though it may be, and let these fragments of truth guide your ruling. I sat palms flat on the table, hearing the quiet gasp of realization echo through the room. The defense lawyer stood for a final blow. Your Honor, admitting this substitute evidence sets a dangerous precedent. If any heir can claim secondary copies suffice, original documents will be targeted for theft across the state. We urge the court to dismiss the codicil entirely, leaving the estate to the primary beneficiaries, as outlined in the last officially recorded document. He snapped his briefcase shut, eyes blazing. I held my breath. Judge Lopez leaned forward, fingertips pressed together, studying each counsel table. The clock on the wall ticked louder than ever. After a breath that seemed to stretch across the room, she spoke. I find that due to the deliberate destruction of the original codicil by agents of the primary beneficiaries, equity demands that this court admit substitute evidence in order to carry out the testator's intent. The chain of custody for the microfilm and digital scans is sufficiently unbroken witness, affidavits are credible, and public policy supports fulfillment of Grandpa's charitable objectives. The motion to exclude the codicil is denied. The motion to admit substitute evidence is granted. A hush that bordered on reverence fell, then muted applause from the veterans in the gallery, a few choked sobs from supporters. My parents slumped into their seats, mouths agape. Michael's shoulders sagged. I clasped my hands, relief and triumph screaming through every nerve. But the fight wasn't over. The judge raised a hand. This ruling addresses only the admission of evidence. The court will schedule a full hearing on the formation and governance of the Carter Community Veterans Trust next month. Until then, all estate assets are frozen pending final determination. The gavel fell. I exhaled the breath of a woman who'd battled greed, corruption, and threats, and had prevailed for now. My eyes met Sophia's. She cracked a weary smile, and Marcus let out a long sigh. Lucas captured the moment on camera, relief, exhaustion, determination, all in one frame. We filed out into the corridor, reporters swarming like cicadas, flashbulbs popped. I answered a few questions. How does it feel? What's next? But my mind was on Franklin's warning that my family might appeal to the state Supreme Court, or even try to negotiate behind the scenes to regain the estate. The threat voicemail from yesterday lingered in my pocket like a ticking bomb. The compass on my lapel glinted as I walked past a mosaics of a broken rose, part of the courthouse steps. Find your true north. I reached out and touched it, letting the fragments of tile press into my fingertips. My journey wasn't just legal, it was moral, spiritual, a testament to values over wealth. That night, back at my apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, gray rain pattered against the windows as I sat in Grandpa's old leather armchair reviewing the judge's written order. I knew the real work lay ahead, establishing the trust, finding trustworthy board members, ensuring transparency so no future Carter could hijack the mission. But for a moment, I let myself feel victorious. I poured a glass of bourbon, Grandpa's favorite, and raised it to the empty chair beside me. "To you, old man," I whispered. "Your legacy lives." The compass lay on the table needle, pointing unwaveringly toward the city center, our shared community. Just as I was about to pour another drink, my phone buzzed an email with no subject from an anonymous sender. I opened it and saw a single line. "Congratulations, Colonel. Ready for the next battlefield." Attached was a photo of my workshop, now under heavy guard and sealed with crime scene tape. Evidence do not remove. Someone had reported the break-in as a felony, not a petty theft. The state had launched a criminal investigation into the destruction of the codicil, and the courthouse had seized the workshop as an evidentiary site. My pulse quickened. The walls were closing in on my family, but now the state's machinery police prosecutors were in motion. This was no longer just a civil matter. The threat of indictment hung over my parents, and they would stop at nothing to save themselves. I set down the glass, heart pounding, as thunder rolled across the bay. The battlefield had broadened from courtroom to criminal court, from personal revenge to public reckoning. I stood compass in hand as rain washed down the windows. My reflection stared back a woman who refused to be small, who'd stood up to her family, to big money interests, to silencing threats, and had won. But the greatest challenges lay ahead. I paced the room thinking of Franklin's next filings. Marcus's investigative leads, Lucas's documentary plans, Sophia's unflinching support. Then I paused, hand on the compass, its needle steady once more. Tomorrow, the real war for justice would begin, and I would be ready. This morning, I woke before dawn to the steady patter of rain on my apartment windows, the same rain that had followed me through every twist and turn of this fight. My phone buzzed with new email alerts, one from General Brooks, checking in another from Franklin, with the proposed bylaws for the Carter Community Veterans Trust, and a final one from the King County Prosecutor's Office, an invitation to meet regarding criminal charges against Senator Jackson's chief aide. My parents' indictment had gone public last night, but now the prosecutors were chasing bigger fish. I dressed in civilian clothes, for once a simple navy sweater and jeans, and clipped Grandpa's cracked brass compass to my car's visor, the needle still finding its north, no matter where the road bent. I drove through Seattle's empty streets, the city lights reflecting off slick pavement, thinking about how far I'd come from a little girl mocked for wanting to serve to a Marine Corps intelligence officer to a daughter who refused to be erased by her own blood. As I pulled into the courthouse parking garage, I caught sight of the mosaic on the lobby floor, an old compass rose inlaid in tile, now worn by generations of boots. It reminded me that truth wasn't always easy to follow, but it was the only path worth taking. Inside the prosecutor's conference room, I found Assistant DA Marisol Kim waiting with stacks of folders on the long table between us. She flipped through the documents, bank transfers showing Senator Jackson's campaign funds, routing through Carter shell companies, voicemail transcripts of Jackson promising to make the Carters whole if they played ball, and travel receipts, placing his aide at the workshop the night the original codicil was burned. My jaw tightened. "This goes higher than the Carters," I said quietly. "You've got enough here to bring down a sitting senator." Marisol nodded, her eyes steely. "With your testimony, yes. But we need you to be airtight, no questions about your motives, no loopholes for the defense to claim you're settling family scores." I let out a slow breath, running my fingers over the compass. "I'm in it for Grandpa's legacy, not revenge," I said. "My duty is to the trust, the veterans, the displaced families. If this proves it, then I'll testify publicly if necessary." She glanced at her notes, then slid a pen across the table. "We'll issue your subpoena today. Expect a grand jury appearance next week." I signed the paper, the pen hovering, as I accepted the gravity of what was to come, a public confrontation with a powerful senator. A risk that my family's last desperate moves would drag my name through the mud again, but I'd faced more dangerous missions abroad. This was for home. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as I stepped onto the wet pavement. A reporter shouted Colonel Carter ready to testify against Senator Jackson. I didn't stop. I simply tucked the compass into my pocket and walked toward my car. The mosaic compass rose glinting in the lobby behind me, proof that some truths outlast storms. That afternoon, I convened a meeting at the old Callahan House, now officially the Carter Community Center, where the first seeds of the Veterans Trust were being planted. The building's peeling paint and uneven floorboards had been stripped and refinished, breathing life back into Grandpa's sanctuary. In the main room, volunteers assembled care packages for veteran families, while scholarship applications lay stacked on tables draped in blue cloth. I watched as a young Army widow, tears in her eyes, read a letter announcing her daughter as a scholarship recipient. Her relief and gratitude cut through me deeper than any court ruling. Later in the side office, I met with the Trust's founding board, Sofia Rodriguez, in her sharp blazer, Lucas Nguyen, with a notepad full of coverage ideas, Marcus Bennett with spreadsheets tracking funding projections, and two community leaders, Mrs. Gomez from last week's testimony, and a local pastor who'd offered the center free counseling services. I stood before them, compass in hand, and felt the weight of their expectations. This trust isn't just about money, I said, my voice echoing in the bare room. It's about honoring Grandpa's real legacy service sacrifice community. We can't let bureaucracy or politics choke that out. Sophia nodded. Lucas typed furiously, and Marcus clicked his pen. I looked around at their determined faces and felt a surge of purpose. The trust would outlive any court order, any indictment. It would stand as a testament to what one man believed in and what one granddaughter refused to let die. That evening, as rain slid down the bay windows, I met with Franklin one last time before my grand jury date. We spread maps of county properties, drafted the initial trust bylaws, and sketched outreach plans for scholarship recipients. Then he leaned back and asked, "How are you holding up?" I stared at the compass on the table, its needle pointing toward a bullet hole-sized crack in the glass. "I'm ready," I said quietly. "But I'm human. I'm scared." I admitted. Franklin gave me a sympathetic look I'd never expected from a courtroom shark. "Fear keeps you sharp," he said. "Just don't let it paralyze you." I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the compass warm under my palm like a heartbeat. "My family's legacy was supposed to be land and fortune," I said softly. I'm forging a new one, dignity for the forgotten, a map for the lost. He nodded, packing up his briefcase. Outside, thunder rumbled as I stepped onto the porch. I clutched the compass, its needle trembling, and felt the final twist of my journey. This wasn't just a court battle or a political vendetta. It was a reckoning of values, of what we choose to fight for when everything is on the line. The grand jury room was a fluorescent-lit chamber with a long table ringed by chairs. I sat beside Marisol Kim Franklin to my left, a prosecutor to my right, and our exhibit folders piled in front of me. Behind the one-way glass, I could see a dozen citizens summoned to hear my testimony. I took a deep breath and began calmly recounting every detail: my grandfather's codicil, the forged will, the theft of the original document, the library microfilm heist, the workshop break-in, my parents' Oa conspiracy. Senator Jackson's bribes, all meticulously documented. I saw the jurors leaning in, some nodding, others scribbling notes. My voice never shook, but inside I felt the remembered sting of betrayal, the silence of a childhood home, the weight of a uniform born on foreign battlefields, the sting of parental contempt. Yet with every sentence, I reclaimed a piece of myself, forging a new identity beyond daughter, sister, or soldier, truth-bearer, protector of legacy, advocate for the unseen. When they asked if I harbored ill will toward my family, I paused, then answered honestly. My love for them is complicated, but my commitment to justice is clear. The foreman gave me a small nod and I finished, walking out of the courthouse into a drizzle that felt softer than last week's deluge. I realized I was different now, hardened by betrayal, yet softened by purpose. I climbed into my car and drove straight to the community center. Inside, volunteers were closing up stacking chairs and turning off lights. I flicked on the old stage spotlight, Grandpa's workshop lights retrofitted, and watched dust motes dance in the beam. I placed the compass on a small wooden pedestal by the entrance, next to a framed photo of Grandpa in uniform, and turned the needle deliberately toward the front door, symbolizing that truth always leads home. Then I walked to the front desk, tapped the computer, and saw a notification, new application, for the Harold Callahan Resilience Award. I opened the email and read a letter from a young veteran who'd been homeless, now accepted to nursing school thanks to our scholarship. She wrote, "You helped me find my true north when I'd lost my way." I closed the laptop, tears pricking my eyes. Real tears not hardened by courtroom battles. I realized Grandpa's legacy had already taken root, living in people's lives. In every rescued compass rose in the lobby, in every scholarship check, in every veteran who found shelter here. As night fell, I locked up and walked outside, rain easing into a fine mist. I stood under the marquee sign, Carter Community Center Compass of Hope, and reached for my phone. A new message from Mom. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I understand if you never speak to me again, but I'm proud of you." My throat tightened. Even now, her words carried the old sting of neglect, but also a glimmer of regret. I thumbed the compass on my car visor, its needle flickering. I considered replying, but instead I stared at the community center's glowing windows. Lives were being rebuilt inside, and that was enough. I typed, "I'm proud of me too. This is bigger than any one family. Thanks for noticing." I hit send and slipped the phone into my pocket. Standing there, I felt a presence beside me, Laura, my partner, holding 2 steaming cups of tea. She handed me one, her eyes warm despite the rain. "You okay?" she asked. I sipped, savoring the warmth. She wrapped an arm around me, steadying. "You did good," she said. "You changed lives today." I leaned into her, feeling the tension in my shoulders finally ease. "We changed lives." I corrected, touching the compass. "This was never just me." She smiled. "Where to next?" I glanced at the compass rose on the pavement, then at the soft glow of the center behind us. "Anywhere the needle points," I said. She laughed, and for the first time in months, I felt free. But as we drove away, I noticed a blinking alert on my phone, an automated news update: breaking. Senator Jackson announces resignation amid federal probe. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The senator's seat would open a new election cycle looming, and that could shape policy for veterans statewide. There would be hearings, campaigns, debates, another battlefield where truth and power collided. I reached for the compass, its needle pointing out the windshield into the night. Looks like our work isn't done, I said softly. Laura nodded. Good, she replied. We've only just started. And as the city lights blurred past, I realized the promise of that compass was endless, a lifetime of finding the way forward one moral choice at a time. The storm had passed, but the journey continued, and I was ready.